This Week in Virology, the podcast about viruses, the kind that make you sick. From MicrobeTV, this is TWiV, This Week in Virology, episode 1285, recorded on January 2nd, 2026. I'm Vincent Racaniello, and you're listening to the podcast all about viruses. Joining me today from Ann Arbor, Michigan, Kathy Spindler.
Hi, Vincent, and hi to all the listeners. Here in Ann Arbor, it's -8 Celsius, feels like -14, and in Fahrenheit, that is 23, and feels like, it's not giving me the feels like temperature. But Vincent, I thought of you earlier this week when it was like 57 degrees at 10 o'clock at night, and then the next morning it was cold and we had those really high winds, and so it was maybe 26, and the wind chill made it -4. That's in Fahrenheit. So you have to pay attention to the wind chill factor, or the feels like temperature. Anyway, it's blue sky and sunny, which is remarkable for Ann Arbor.
Actually, someone in our letters sent a link where there's a camera outside. I could look at it and see what the weather is. Before, when I got here this morning, it was cloudy. Currently, it's 0 C, and it feels like -7 C. It was like -6 this morning when I got up. This is really cold for this area at this part of the year.
And you had all that snow too.
Yeah, we had 4 inches. A week ago. It was nothing.
Yeah, it makes it
But
sound
the thing
like,
is, it got warm for a day and it started to melt, and then it froze immediately. Now it's very treacherous outside.
Yeah.
But anyway, today is my birthday, January 2nd.
Yes.
So
Happy birthday.
Thank you. I know you already wished me, but I'm just telling, this is what I do on my birthday, just like every other day. I like doing this very much. I feel that I'm very lucky to be able to do science podcasts. And so I do it as much as I can, and hopefully you enjoy it as well. And if you enjoy it, we'd love your support. We don't do advertising on any of these programs. I don't really want to ever. And, if we lost all of your support, I'd have to cut costs because I still want to do them. I'd have to give up the incubator and do all the editing myself and all the posting myself again. But I don't think we'll get to that point because I know many of you like what we do. So we'd love your support. Microbe.tv/contribute.
And this month is also the fundraiser, or the double, what is it? Through the Parasites Without Borders site. If you give through that you get the matching gift.
Daniel will match your donations.
Yeah.
Up to $20,000.
Yeah.
Right? So what if it goes over that it won't be matched? I don't know where we are. So so that's for the month of January also.
Mm-hmm.
You can do that. But if you're after January, we'd love you to support us directly. Microbe.tv/contribute. You've done a great job so far. We've been able to run most of our operations on your donations, and we really appreciate it. As science now, understanding science is always important, but now more than ever, because there are government officials who lied to you about it. So there's another email coming up where they cite a post from Jim Allwine where he says, this is why RFK Jr. is lying about the 1918 influenza. That's what he just said it outright. He's lying because he is lying. It's all wrong. Anyway, microbe.tv/contribute. What's up with ASV, Kathy?
Well, as you know, the 2026 meeting will be in Minneapolis at the University of Minnesota at the end of July 27th to 30th. And so the deadlines are coming up really quickly. 1 month from today, February 2nd, is when your abstracts are due. And by the time you hear this, it'll be less than a month away. And the travel award deadline is February 9th, a week later. And for the travel awards, if you want to apply for one, you need to be a current member. So now is a really good time to renew your membership. while you're still stewing about what you should put in your abstract. It's really easy in comparison to just renew your membership. So membership fees are modest, especially for trainees. Go to asv.memberclicks.net to renew your membership, check out the program for the meeting and all of that.
Yeah, Minneapolis is a good venue. I like it. Looking forward to that. It's going to be tough to match last year's TWiV, though. Charlie was great.
Yes. We'll talk a little more about that. Yeah.
So today is our traditional year-end review of TWiV and virology in the previous year, 2025, and we published 98 episodes of TWiV last year. That's pretty good. Basically 2 a week. So 1 clinical update and 1 regular episode. That's 94 regular episodes and 4 specials. So what is a special? It's just usually a guest, and I just can't fit it into the numbering scheme. Well, I could if I published an extra. Well, the special is usually an extra one outside of the numbering scheme. So I could just number them all. There are fewer specials this year because I started numbering everything, right? But I just.
But then there were those, 4.
Doesn't really matter, but that's it. 98 episodes. And one of the things that happens, which happens every year because people age, is that virologists and other scientists died. And of course, right at the top is our colleague Dixon who died early in 2025, who had been with TWiV. He started it with me in 2008. And he was always a lot of fun and to have on the show. He had great picks. He had great sense of humor. He had insight into a lot of things. So I really miss him. And so do many other people do.
Indeed.
Aside from him, Ann Palmenberg passed away, a virologist I knew for many, many years, a force in the field. David Baltimore, my postdoctoral mentor. And on that event, I reissued TWiV 100, which we had recorded. He was visiting Columbia, and I recorded it with Rich and Alan online. And I decided to release it. And I realized I had a video file that I never had released before. Because when we did that, we weren't doing video. Nevertheless, I set up a video camera in the office and I just recorded him. And then I didn't know what to do with it. But I thought I could put it on YouTube now with just him, the camera on him. And so that was fun. Klaus Konzelman, Margaret Rossiter, author of the trilogy Women Scientists in America. Marc Girard, who was at the Pasteur Institute in Paris and worked on poliovirus for many years, was a competitor. I remember when I made the infectious clone of poliovirus, David wrote me, he said, "I'd like to send it to Mark. He's a competitor, but he's a good guy." Can you imagine? I just make this reagent. It's okay. Well, it's his lab, so we sent it to him. Jim Watson, of course. That's it. There may have been more, right? But I think those
are the main ones that come to mind, right?
Actually, I asked ChatGPT who are the virologists who died in 2025, and I'll tell you who they did. So they got David Baltimore, Vladimir Vonka, a Czech physician and virologist whose research linked viruses to cervical cancer. Okay. And Ana Glishik, a Yugoslav Serbian virologist who studied various viruses. Marc Girard and Karl Klaus Konzelman, besides David, of course. So, yeah, those are the virologists. So, ChatGPT, the ultimate arbiter. Just joking here.
Right.
In the past, we always used to pick our favorite titles. There's just 2 of us today, but it's better than nothing. Would you have a favorite title, Kathy, for last year?
Well, so a lot of the titles in the last year, I know we've tried to include more about what the actual topic is about rather than something that's funny or punny. Although oftentimes we struggle even with the punny ones. We want them to be something about the episode. And so if the title doesn't include both of the viruses or both of the major topics, then we struggle with that. But so I think that both you and I have chosen titles that don't particularly tell you what the episode is about. But I chose just with really almost no thought at all, Better Cocktails and CRISPR Chicken. And now I would have to go back to 1257 to figure out what that was about. The Better Cocktails is, I think, better antiviral drug cocktails for something. And the CRISPR Chicken was obviously making some kind of genetic modification of chickens that was going to help virus research in some way.
Yeah, because it's chickens, you figure it's H5N1 or avian influenza.
Right,
so
right.
The cocktails, combination therapy for HTLV1 infection.
That's right. Okay.
Yeah, because that's been a problem. Yeah, that's most of these clever ones are made by Allen.
Right.
And they're not so clever when they're just straightforward. So sometimes I insist that we have a straightforward. For example, herpesviruses and dementia. I really want that to be straightforward. And it helps. It gets a lot more listen when you have a straightforward title and people say, oh, I want to listen to this, right? I mean, there's an audience who will listen to every episode no matter what. And that's great.
Right.
But if you want to grab new people, herpesviruses and dementia, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there are a bunch of others too, which we'll mention. Anyway, my favorite was Too Sexy to Eradicate, which doesn't tell you anything about, right? I mean, I had even forgotten until I went to it. And that was all about, well, we had guests from the University of Colorado, Boulder. I have the link here. So it was David Barton, Brian Kempf, and Ulf Pearson.
And he's at Colorado State.
Colorado State.
Oh, yeah.
We talked about RNA recombination among enteroviruses. So RNA recombination is kind of like viral sex, right? You have two different viruses and they recombine and out comes something different. It's like, regular sex. And they talked about eradication. So that was a cute title, and they liked it, actually. Barton loved the title, right? So I said, okay, if the guests like it, it's their show.
Right.
But it doesn't tell you anything about. But maybe someone will listen because it's got a clever title. Anyway, our title selections happen at the end of TWiV. And usually people list a bunch of possibilities at the top of the show notes, and then we go over them and discuss them, usually by a vote of some kind. I rarely override, but if I want this to be straightforward, then like herpesviruses and dementia.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's a vote so much. It's just a consensus is reached.
Yeah, we don't count votes.
Right.
We also had a bunch of guests last year. We always have a lot of guests. It's fun to have guests. We had Jake Scott on 1277 talking about vaccines. We had Charlie Rice at ASV, TWiV 1237. He talked about his work on hepatitis C virus. A really compelling episode because it was live. Me and Kathy were there.
Mm-hmm.
And we had a big audience, too. It was great.
Mm-hmm.
It's very gratifying.
Mm-hmm.
Stanley Plotkin.
Wow.
In the company of vaccines. That was great.
It was really good.
So many years experience working on vaccines. And he kept saying, I could tell you more about this. And I never took him up on it because I figured we were going to go forever. I didn't want him to get tired either. That was the main thing.
But he was very entertaining.
He was great.
Highly recommend it. 1247. Yeah.
Elke Volants, who I interviewed while I was in Greece, she talked about some work they did looking at the wastewater from airplanes, from the toilet.
Oh yeah, that was
looking
good.
For initially SARS-CoV-2. They picked airplanes coming from China, landing in. She's in Belgium, yeah. And they would. She told about what they had to do to get the wastewater. They would go and get it themselves right out of the plane, right? So initially, there's a truck that goes and sucks the water out. I mean, it's a mess. She said it's got toilet paper in it, and it's disgusting. And she said she opened a jar once in the hood, and the whole lab immediately stunk, and everyone left, even though it's a fume hood where it's supposed to not get out. Anyway, you should listen to it because it's really good.
Yeah.
Then more recently, I went to Virginia Tech, where I spoke with X.J. Meng and Kylene Keen Hall about their work on different viruses. That was fun. We had the guys from Colorado, which I just talked to you about, Adam Ratner, 1201, talking about measles. That's his expertise. So that's really good. Not too long ago, I went to Germany for the Giant Viruses meeting. I talked with John Archibald, Susanna Coelho. I had to ask her to pronounce it. The H is silent in Portuguese.
Right.
So she said Coelho.
Coelho. Yeah.
Something like that. And Tom Delmont. It was really, really good. It built on an episode we had done before about Mirus or Mirus, right? So virus would be Mirus, but I said to Tom, what is it? He says he calls them Mirus viruses. I said, well, that's not right. It's virus. It's not well, I can't even pronounce V like that. Anyway, because he had done the work that we talked about on that paper, and John found a Mirus virus. And his host, and then Susanna works on brown algae, and had found a virus also. So it's very interesting. At this meeting, most of the people are not virologists.
Right.
There are people who study plankton, tiny set creatures that float around. So I asked Tom at breakfast, what's a plankton? He said, it's small things that can't locomote on their own. They're pushed around by currents.
That would be like viruses.
Yeah, viruses or single-celled eukaryotes. Even if they have a little flagella, the currents are going to push them around. And these people mostly study algae and other eukaryotic microbes, and they stumble upon viruses and they get interested in them. So anyway, that was a fun episode. I had a lot of fun with that. I went to the Harvard Virology Retreat, and I spoke with Aaron Schmidt, Ben Gewirtz, and Tatum Sass. What a name, Tatum Sass. She was an advanced graduate student. She said she loves having the name of Sass, right? So I said, are you full of sass? And she said, yeah.
I am Sass.
That was a lot of fun. Then I went to Greece and spoke at the European Society for Clinical Virology with Piotr Kramars and Pamela Valelli. And I remember, so there's a scientist at the European CDC who I had interviewed the meeting before a couple of years ago. I can't remember her name, but she was at this meeting. She said, ask Piotr what his hobbies are. So I said, what do you do when you're not doing science? He said, I go ice swimming. So he said he's from, he's working in, where's the ESCV? Sweden, in Sweden. He said, they go and cut a hole in the ice and they jump in. He said, it's very good for you. He said, next time you come, I'll bring you. I said, nope. No, not happening. Well, it's supposedly if you take cold showers, it's good for you. Did you know that?
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's supposed to do something to your metabolism. If you periodically take cold showers, you will live longer. But it's too late for me, I think. David Tuller was here once talking about long COVID and MECFS. And then we had 3 guests on separate occasions. Rich Conda had gone to the Hep B meeting at the end of 2024, and he had interviewed Thomas Tu, Shari Cohen, and Stefan Urban. And they weren't released until 2025. That's why they're in the 2025. But they were released as specials, and those were guests. Thomas Tu is interesting. He works on the virus, and he also has hepatitis B. Right. So he has a unique perspective. So I would say it was a good year in terms of episodes and guests. Mm-hmm. And we have guests we're thinking about for 2026, of course, and meetings to go to. Okay, so here are some. We have like 10 or so, maybe 12 different topics. So the idea is we would pick It's kind of an area that was interesting that we covered a lot on TWiV, or if not a lot, it was interesting. So I'll go first with, a big theme this year was dismantling of science and public health in the U.S. by the current administration. We talked about that all the time. And now in the last 3 months, we've actually cut back a bit. Alan said it was too depressing. But, for example, TWiV 1199, we talked about this, the second death in the measles outbreak in Texas. The Trump administration starting to have a fight with Columbia University, cancel $400 million in research grants.
And then that went on to have fights with Harvard and Northwestern and Penn and et cetera, et cetera. Just, yeah.
They didn't fight with Michigan, did they?
No, but there was some fear. Michigan was on your next list or something, kind of.
In TWiV 1191, freezing and unfreezing of government grants by the administration, 1197. First measles death in Texas outbreak. The other one was, the timing is not right here. Our withdrawal from polio, malaria, HIV programs like USAID and PEPFAR. It just kept going on and on. 1203. Oh, yeah. RFK Jr. says, when chicken flocks get avian influenza, just let it rip and take the survivals and breed them. Just ridiculous. Just ridiculous, showing no knowledge of science. And at 1205, so there's this outbreak of measles in Texas, and RFK Jr. says, take vitamin A. And then kids start getting liver damage because vitamin A in excess is toxic. And there's also, we talked about how vitamin A does not change the clinical course of measles in high-income countries.
Right.
NIH cutting COVID-19 research, ending vaccine funds for poor countries, hiring an anti-vaxxer to study vaccines and autism, new dual-use research of concern policy. Boy, that was a big one. A lot of bad things there. But in that episode, we used the word pluviosity.
We'll talk more about pluviosity later.
TWiV 1209. Yeah. RFK Jr. talking about single antigen vaccines. And it was then, this is April, he says, by September, I will have the cause of autism identified. I think we didn't really. I mean, he said it was as aluminum, but there's no evidence that aluminum has anything to do with it.
It's 4 months later, and we don't have what he claimed he would have by September. So it just shows how he doesn't know what he doesn't know.
1211, this was a good title, Mu Flu and Dengue 2. Rising autism rate among children, and RFK Jr.'s claim that autism destroys lives. A lot of parents got pissed off at that. My kids' lives are not destroyed. 1215. Oh, yes. So the integrated research facility is shut down, and a lot of contractors are fired, including our friend Jens Kuhn. This ridiculous universal flu vaccine initiative announced at the NIAID, which is basically combining formalin inactivated vaccines. It was just ridiculous, and it's being pushed as high tech. But in this episode also, we talked about a model which would study the reemergence of infectious disease under the idea that vaccination rates would drop. And, in coming years, many, many cases of all different diseases, hepatitis, polio, influenza, etc. 1217, this is now May, new chief of CBER. Oh, I got cyber here. It's a division of FDA that regulates vaccines, and that's where Amy Rosenfeld used to work. So I got a new chief, Vinay Prasad, who is supremely unqualified for the job, and we talked about that a lot. TWiV 1219. That was when HHS decided to stop recommending COVID shots for pregnant women and children.
Right.
And every other country in the world recognizes pregnancy as a risk factor for severe COVID. So this is just a pattern of malignant ignorance happening in this country by people who don't believe in vaccines. 1225, the administration calls for gold standard science, which is a phrase that they kept repeating, and someone called it fool's gold standard science. I think someone who wrote an article in Science about it. That was first coming out then, 1233. Yes, the FDA director overriding scientists on COVID shots.
Yeah.
Trump cuts subscriptions to Springer Nature journals. U.S. defunding USAID could lead to 14 million deaths by 2030. I mean, it just got worse and worse, right?
Yeah, I counted up from the number of episodes that you put here and the 3 times when you had picks of the week, there were at least 23 episodes. It's basically half of the episodes.
Yeah, we talked about it a lot.
And of course, it's not just infectious disease and public health.
Right.
The latest one, which really frustrated me, is NCAR, National Center for Atmospheric Research in Boulder, Colorado. And an article that I read yesterday suggested that it's retribution against the state of Colorado because he's also vetoed the water pipeline, which is really important in, I forget her first name, Lauren Boebert, who's a Republican member of Congress. And it's really important for her constituents who voted for Trump 3 times. And yet they're cutting that. And so they think it's because Colorado is the new California. But so the National Center for Atmospheric Research is huge. Hugely important. You might not have heard of it, but I actually toured there with my older brother once, and it's a really nice facility. But it's really important because it does all kinds of atmospheric research relating to weather, climate, and things like that. And so it would be comparable, I think, to saying, okay, we're just gonna close the CDC. We're just not going to fund it, and we're going to close the CDC. Only they said it about NCAR, and it maybe isn't as well known or appreciated, and so it hasn't. I mean, it was above the fold on the front page of the New York Times the day that they announced it. But for the general public, they're going to say, "What's NCAR? Why do I care?" You will care,
Right?
That's the problem. You will care when it's too late, because you'll then know what it was important for.
Anyway, a couple more, but I think you've heard the idea that we covered a lot of what's happening and it's still going on. And hopefully 2026 is the year that we have the chance to change this. We have midterm elections in November. It'll be here before you know it. And I hope we're making the case that the administration needs to change. That at least Congress has to go flip so that we can stop doing these things. Because, for example, if you want to impeach RFK Jr. currently, it will not happen because the Republicans control both houses, both the House and the Senate. But if we can get more Democrats in there, it could be done.
Right.
And of course, the president himself, outside of science, has done many illegal things, and it needs to be checked.
Yeah, and the courts and the lawsuits are having some victories in some of those situations, but a lot of times the damage has already been done, or in some years in the future we will reap the bad benefits of those damages.
Yeah. So another one I picked was this theme of herpesviruses and dementia, which all of a sudden came out this year and really it was remarkable. It started in January with an episode 1187, the Tau of herpes virus.
essentially that tau is a protective protein in the brain. It responds. It's made by a DNA sensing pathway. So the pathway senses the presence of herpes virus, and then tau is synthesized as a means of combating infection, but it ends up being problematic because tau can aggregate and lead to dementias. And then TWiV 1207, really interesting, a reduction in dementia incidence in recipients of Zostavax, the zoster vaccine, not Shingrix, but Zostavax, which would be the attenuated shingles vaccine that preceded Shingrix. Subsequently, it was found that the same protective effect also applies to Shingrix as well. So get vaccinated against herpes zoster. It will, I mean, it's not 100%, like nothing is 100%, but it will help your chances of avoiding dementia. And then 1285, another one, herpes simplex virus infection doubles the risk of dementia. So that's a different virus. It's herpes simplex virus, right? The cold sore genital lesion virus. But a good number of cases, it gets in the brain, and so that can increase the risk of dementia. And then finally, actually not finally yet, 1249, we had quite a few articles on this. That's 1249, the one I just did. 1285. I got, that's wrong. 1285 is, got the wrong link. Let's just see, TWiV 1285. Okay, why isn't there? There's no. This is 1285 right here that
yes.
we're recording. That's why.
Okay.
I don't know why that's there. There's one more. 1263. Varicella reactivation and risk of dementia. So they looked at a cohort of patients who had reactivation versus those who didn't, and they have a risk of dementia. So multiple evidences that herpes simplex and VZV infection can increase your risk of dementia, and shingles vaccination can decrease it. I thought that was a really maybe one of the top stories of the year. Also, not dementia per se, but long COVID, of course, has a lot of neurological issues associated with it. And in this episode 1233, we reviewed research on how host interleukin-1 genetics regulates both Epstein-Barr virus reactivation and long COVID. So people with long COVID, they tend to have EBV reactivation, and this is the mechanism behind that. So that was really an interesting arc, as we call them in TWiV land.
So I immediately thought of hepatitis B and hepatitis C. And so starting back at 1213 was an episode that was really the kind of story that I really like. It's like, how does the virus do it? What's the molecular biology? What's the mechanism? What's going on? And so this is a story about covalently closed circular DNA, that form of hepatitis B, and how nucleosomes that form on double-stranded DNA, which are the protein complexes made up primarily of histones in the case of our chromosomes, how that primes hepatitis B virus infection. And I don't know, Vincent, if you want to add to that story or the take-home message. But anyway, I thought that was cool. And then it built on those kinds of stories that Rich talked about and that Vincent mentioned earlier, the TWiV specials, a shot of Hep B with Sherry Cohen, a shot of Hep B with Stefan Urban, and a shot of Hep B with Thomas Tu. So those links will all be in there as well. And then 1279 was most recent, and Vincent, you were involved in that. You could summarize that if you want.
Yeah, so this was, I thought with Hep B being in the news, right, because ACIP deciding to
Right.
remove the birth dose, ridiculous, that we should talk about hepatitis. So, the Baruch Blumberg received the Nobel Prize for identifying hepatitis B virus. And it's quite an interesting story. He got it in 1976, and he had not been looking for hepatitis causing agents at all. He was interested in something totally different, and he stumbled upon hepatitis B virus. So, and he said himself in his Nobel lecture, this shows why you can't just decide to solve diseases. You have to just do research, find things accidentally. So I really like that very much.
And while we're still on hepatitis B, I want to mention the blog post that Trudy Ray put up yesterday on the Virology blog entitled Why We Vaccinate Newborns Against Hepatitis B. It's a really nice summary that you can point to for any of your friends or family who may not want to listen to the details on TWiV. She wrote a really nice blog post. And for those of you who have been following the Virology blog for a while and for years, know that it kind of has a dual personality in that there are a lot of posts there by David Tuller about ME/CFS. And Vincent has wanted for a long time to get it so that when you land on the page, you can see the virology posts, which are some of them have been written by Vincent, and lately a lot of them have been written by Trudy Ray. They're now separated. Those are at the top, and then on the bottom half of the landing page, you'll see how to get to David Tuller's post. So it's a nice way to accommodate that dual nature of that. And
the posts used to be all mixed up, and people said, "Oh, I can't find it," because David is very prolific, and Trudy writes once every couple of weeks. So I thought this would be a good way to separate them out.
Yeah, I think it's going to work well. So that's it for hepatitis B for now, and then hepatitis C. And as Vincent said, we had Charlie Rice at the ASV meeting, and he had given the keynote address for the meeting, which also happened to be the Lynette lecture, which the Lynette lecture is a historical one. And we got his permission to have it put up on the website, but then they changed the website, and I know how to find it, and the other Lynette lectures are there, but Charlie Rice's is still not there. So when it gets there, I promise I will tell all of you, because you could watch what his presentation was there. But we also interviewed him, and you could also go to the Nobel site and see his Nobel lecture, which was also very good. But the story about getting the molecular clone for hepatitis C is just a great story in persistence. He would say, we thought it would be this, and so we tried this, and that didn't work. And so then we figured, oh, well, it could be this, and we tried this, and it didn't work. And, they just kept at it, and eventually they got the molecular clone, and that was what was really crucial for breaking open the research field into hepatitis C and showing possible antiviral approaches and so forth. And Charlie was just a really great guest. I had many people who I don't often hear from, and you probably did too, Vincent, say, oh, that was just such a good TWiV episode. So I highly recommend you go check out 1237.
Yeah, he was great. Of course, we gave him good questions too, right?
Yeah. but we knew what questions to ask based on what he'd given in his Nobel lectures and things like that. So, yeah.
Yeah. No, that reminds me of David Baltimore. He did experiments for 2 weeks, then got the Nobel Prize. He said, but we had spent 10 years learning what questions to ask.
Right.
It's easy to answer them.
Right. So for my next topic, earlier this week, I thought, what topics come to mind after hepatitis? And then I just thought, well, the resurgence of us picking picks of the week. So those of you who've been with TWiV from the beginning or since the pre-pandemic days, anyway, the pre-COVID pandemic days, know that we always had picks of the week. And then during the pandemic, there was at least one person who said, "Oh, you shouldn't do that. This is just too serious times. You shouldn't do these picks of the week." And we also felt like we didn't have time, and we were trying to answer all the kinds of listener questions and things. And so, but eventually we were able to bring those back. And so the idea is that it can be really pretty much anything, but it's supposed to be a pick of the week, maybe related to science. And so I went through and found some of our themes. And also, there used to be an archive of the picks of the week. And, Vincent was doing this all himself, and he didn't have time to keep that up. So if somebody wants to go back and do this, I can tell you it would be a lot of work, because I went through and just tried to find the themes from this year's picks of the week, and it took a while. But I think what we'll do is put this document that I've created, we'll put it up within this show, just like the letters get posted. It'll be like I wrote this letter, and it'll just have the topics and the maybe something about the topic and the episode number, and then you'll just have to go and find the episode number. And of course, easiest way to do that usually is just in your search bar for Google or whatever search thing you use, just put in TWiV 1205, for instance, and then that will come up, bring up the link and the link to the YouTube and all that kind of stuff. Okay, so some of the topics. Mm-hmm. One of the topics that we often do, and this is why I just said 1205, is because we pick things that have to do with writing and language. So, for example, my first pick of 2025 in the recap episode last year was Says Who, A Kinder, Funner Usage Guide for Everyone Who Cares About Words by Ann Curzan, who's a faculty member here and does little podcasts of her own. And so that was fun, and she'll come up again later. But World Morse Code, Alan picked one in 1185. Pareidolia, I picked in 1187. And then 1205, pluviosity. This was a word that came up, and I looked it up for today because I didn't quite remember. It has to do with raininess, or the level of precipitation in a given area or period. So Vincent picked 1209 about medieval manuscripts and ancient DNA. Alan picked You're Probably Using the Wrong Dictionary in 1251. And then more recently, I picked a Saturday morning physics episode with Ann Curzan, When Physics Lost Its K and Other Language Quarks, and the fact that most of the physicists pronounce it quark. Anyway, they don't pronounce it the way I do. And then the word physic used to have a K in it, and she talks a lot about data, things relating to science, right? Like data is versus data are, and things like that. Another theme that you'll recognize is that we like to pick things having to do with sky and space. And so Brianne picked one, 1197. It was auroras. I picked an astronomy picture of the day, which is a source of a lot of picks about space and things. And 1209 was about the International Space Station. Brianne picked 1231 about the Milky Way. Jolene picked James Webb Space Telescope Cosmos Interactive Map Viewer. Brianne picked something about Planet Y. And then this one could be either astronomy, sky and space, or could be photography, but I picked Astronomy Photographer of the Year in 1267. And then a lot of times we'll find links for really cool data sources. And there was just one within the last week or two, and I didn't capture that one. But Rich had one about data about buoys in the ocean. 1185. 1189, Alan about NOAA space weather dashboards. 1205, March Madness bracket mathematics. That's about data and bracket mathematics. Tides and currents graph, Rich found. a reliable vaccine info data site Rich gave us. So that's another thing that we like to find and look at. And then I thought I would intersperse at this point some, we invite listener picks, and they will pick some of the same themes that you'll hear about here. There was one about graffiti in Sydney, a book about American medicine, one about the solar system, one about eukaryotic transcription, one that was a gotcha video that was kind of scary, a book, Virus Hunters by Greer Williams, measles and polio down in the schoolyard, which is a Marsh family video to me and Julio down in the schoolyard. So that was a really good one. And then one of them picked Arcadia, a play by Tom Stoppard. And then we have a lot of picks of the week related to disease and health, so getting more toward the serious aspects of it. So Alan picked 1187, screw worm. Vincent picked one 1193 about vaccine success. Rich picked one in 1207 about roller coasters and kidney stones. Then Vincent picked one, it's a Veritasium one about poisonous chemicals from refrigerators, and that led to PFAS. So a lot of these were fun for me because they were things that when I listen to the TWiV, I'm not always somewhere to remember to write down and say, oh yeah, I got to go look at that pick of the week. So now I've refreshed my memory and we'll go look at some of these in more detail. Alan had one about termites spreading from boats. AI may make doctors less skilled at spotting cancer. So a couple picks, particularly from listeners, touched on AI, but this one Brianne picked 1245. Rich picked one about Chagas disease, 1257. Vincent recently picked one about how to get the best sleep, 1267, and I guess he's gotten some listener feedback about more ways to get good sleep. And then we had some, as alluded to already, but some about science and molecular biology history. Alan, in 1257, pointed out that there's a history of molecular biology archive that was put together by kind of a quack or a shyster who was collecting this stuff. I know. Anyway, somehow it has now found the right place. It's in Philadelphia in a particular museum that I forgot to capture the name of it, but it supposedly includes photograph 51. And so in 1275, I picked the Saturday Morning Physics episode that explains photograph 51, which is the famous X-ray diffraction photograph, and that Saturday Morning Physics describes how you get from that crossed and the different spacings and so forth, and how that tells you that DNA is a double helix. And then Vincent also picked one that was the 7 basic science discoveries that changed the world. So we kind of look at the intersection of science and history. And then there's so many of these. It's almost every week what I consider just general wow and fun science. So I won't give you all the episode numbers, but you can look at this document later. But I picked one about dragonflies. Vincent picked one about hummingbirds, scales on moth wings. Alan picked. Rich picked one about firefly aerospace. I picked one about mouse behavior, and another one about frogicles, frogs that freeze over winter and how they survive. Alan picked one about polar bears and one about mason bees, one about Mendel's peas. Angela picked one about chimps and fermented fruit. Rich picked one. I think I missed hearing this one when he picked it, a belly button lint. That there's a mutation responsible for orange cats. Brianne picked that. Benefits of interacting with nature. Angela picked, and in that was episode 1241. In that same one, I picked how there might be uses for dental floss delivery of vaccines, but mostly it was a story about how these guys managed to use dental floss on mice. It took 2 people, so it was a very laborious set of experiments. Vincent picked a paper about cacio e pepe, and then there was a follow-up too. I don't know if that was some other pick or something, but a listener pick about DNA captured in the air. Rich talked about rabbits that have horn-like growths, and that's, of course, a papillomavirus. Alan picked several about worms. One was this tower of nematodes that can wiggle as if they're one organism. Then there was another one about parasitic worms that use static electricity that Alan picked. Then there was one that Vincent picked. I don't know if you remember this. You said you found this one that bats prey on and consume birds while they're flying. So bats are doing that. And then 8 episodes later, Alan picked one that rats snatch the bats out of the air and eat them. So it's not safe to be in the air if you're a bird or a bat. Something might snatch you and eat you. Brienne talked about civet coffee. And then another cat story recently Rich picked where some scientist at University of Florida has a cat that he keeps checking for viruses and has done virus discovery. There have been resources for teaching. So Brienne picked 1239, a video about MHC Class 1 presentation. And Jolene picked 2 different ones, one called Ribosome Studio in 1261 and a data visualization workshop in 1275. There have been a lot of books, mostly Alan, Vincent, and Rich. So Alan, A Paradise Built in Hell, Rich, The Monk in the Garden, and Old Man's War. Alan also picked Broken Earth Trilogy. Vincent picked The Peripheral and Transformer. And Jolene picked Aerosmith. Oh, here. And then Jolene also picked I was just shoveling snow the other day when I was listening to her picking the Dinosaur Therapy, Dinosaur Philosophy, and Dinosaur Friendship books. Right. And then you picked, on that same episode, 1283, 1 + 1 = 1. And then a recurring theme that we've had, and maybe not so much this year because I didn't find that many links to it, but we used to have a lot more of these, where we'd pick photo contests, and Dixon was really good at finding these, the Nikon Small World Photo Contest and so forth. And so there was 1233, and a Nature Scientist at Work photo competition, and that Alan picked that. In 1277, Angela picked Science Meets Art. But I mostly wanted to use this opportunity to talk about Dixon's own prize-winning photography. And I might just segue to that part of our list where we're going to talk about Dixon. But Christine Nalla on the TWiP tribute to Vincent. Dixon, sorry. Sorry, to Dixon. Vincent excerpted what Christine said. And it's just a short 1 minute, 36 second where there's images from Dixon in the background. But then she also gives the link to the www.despommierphotoart.com, which has just amazing set of photography by Dixon. So, as I said, maybe this is the time to segue to our several tributes to Dixon. One was the episode we had on TWiV 1195, and all of the TWiV co-hosts came to that episode, and everybody got to say what they remembered about Dixon and what an amazing person he was. And then similarly on TWiP 254, This Week in Parasitism, those co-hosts also talked about Dixon. And then, as I said, Christine Nalla from that episode had this short YouTube excerpt that Vincent pulled out about Dixon's photography. And then, Vincent, you can mention this thing about the textbook.
So over at parasiteswithoutborders.com, Daniel Griffin for a number of years has published and given away a textbook, Parasitic Diseases. And the authors include Daniel and Dixon, Peter Hotez, Chuck Knersch. And so Daniel decided to rename it Despommiers Parasitic Diseases. It's now the 8th edition has come out under that branding, and that will continue going forward. And you can go to the website, parasiteswithoutborders.com, and get a free copy of it, free DF, if you'd like. And if you listen to TWiP, you can enter into contests every month to win a free copy of PD8. So that's very cool.
Yeah. Anyway, we all miss Dixon, and if you want to listen to some of those tributes or just check out his photography, we'll have the links in this show.
Talking about the picks of the week, I found there still is a website. Goes up to TWiV 506.
Right.
Where I had put all the picks of the week. But obviously there are many, many more episodes. I'm not going to go back and add them.
Right.
But I used to do it by hand, and it just got to be too much.
Right. And also, it seemed like for a while we even had a bookshelf, a book list or something.
Yeah.
And in fact, I think there were links on Amazon.com, and you would get a few pennies if a book was purchased through that.
Yeah.
Link.
Also, I had a list of our guests.
Yes.
Separately.
Yeah.
But, none of these seem to be of much interest to people because when they stop, nobody complains. So I figured,
except for some of us who use it for the archive purposes.
Yeah,
and then we figured out, well, sometimes you can just Google and figure out what you need. Yeah.
So another arc from 2025, of course, is not just avian influenza H5N1, but which we did a lot on, but specifically the infection of dairy cattle. Which is something that was first detected in March of 2024 in Texas and Kansas. It was a virus that spilled over from wild birds into dairy cattle. It was a particular reassortant and has spread to many states and many, many herds, largely from movement of cattle and dairy cows and dairy cattle and some contaminated farm transmission by contaminated equipment. But the virus remains viable on surfaces and in milk, so that's another way. There have been a few human infections, farm workers and so forth. There's no evidence yet of human-to-human transmission, which is good. And as you know, H5N1 has suddenly infected many, many more animals globally than it ever did. And many mammals are being killed by it. And it's worrisome because the more hosts that are infected, the more the chances are that a variant will emerge that's able to spread. So far it does not transmit from human to human, but that's what people are worried about. So we talked about this in TWiV 1193, 1257. In 1259, an interesting story of how it can also infect goats, not just dairy cattle. And TWiV 1211, move flu and dengue 2. So that's a story that we're going to continue to cover. Many of these are, of course, but avian influenza and in particular the dairy. It's interesting. It's just in the U.S. that this is happening. And of course, Australia still has not seen an isolation of influenza H5N1 virus. It's very interesting. Another arc, well, this is a single story, and I thought Brianne might be here. Unfortunately, she's not feeling well. But this is TWiV 1273. EBV and lupus have not escaped our notice. Now, of course, this was a play on the Watson and Crick paper that we did in that episode where that last sentence is, it has not escaped our notice that the structure can make us think of a way that for DNA to be replicated, right? And so what this is that we have known that Epstein-Barr virus and autoimmunity are linked, but we weren't quite sure of the mechanism. And this is a paper, where was it? Science Translational Medicine. So basically, everybody has B cells, naive B cells that haven't been activated yet, which are directed against self. They're not supposed to be there, but they are, because nothing works 100%. And when you get an autoimmune disease, some of these are activated and make antibodies against your own proteins. EBV, it turns out, reproduces in B cells. And so it just so happens that randomly it will reproduce in a B cell that makes an autoantibody. And so it triggers an autoimmune disease like lupus. And not just that, but it will, the way the mechanism works, which you can find out about in the episode, is that once those B cells are activated, they activate other B cells, so you get amplification of the antibody production. So it's a really good understanding of the mechanism by which EBV induces this autoimmune disease. We talked a lot about vaccines.
Yes. Yes. I was trying to just tally the picks of the week, and then vaccines just kept coming up over and over, because it's a major tool in our armamentarium against viruses. And so the first one that I found was a news bit right at the beginning of the year in 1185 about Guillain-Barré syndrome and respiratory syncytial virus. Then the viruses that you can think of are the ones that we had vaccine episodes about. And again, maybe we'll just put the links to these in, but included COVID-19 and flu. And then the story about norovirus. Vincent, I think you want to talk about that.
Yeah, that's a really cool vaccine. This is an oral vaccine tablet, right? So you take a pill and it induces mucosal immunity against norovirus. This was a study done in older adults. It's Science Translational Medicine again. And I thought that had a lot of promise because, needle, oral vaccine is beautiful and it actually works.
Yeah. Yeah. And we would all like to have a vaccine against norovirus.
Indeed.
But also then dengue. And then Vincent, you had a pick of the week about the Vaccine Education Center, and I didn't have time to go look at that. I don't know if you.
Yeah, so this is a center at the University of Pennsylvania Children's Hospital of Pennsylvania, and Paul Offit is involved in it. And it's just full of really good vaccine information, right? It's just all the right stuff. And if you need to get something that goes against what the anti-vaxxers are saying, this would be a good place to go. For example, you could ask, why do babies have to get Hep B at birth? And this will tell you, as well as many other things that we've told you today. So it's a great resource.
And then there was a pause for one of the two chikungunya virus vaccines, one called IXCHIQ, which is a live attenuated vaccine, which I ran into because I'm going somewhere and the travel clinic suggested, or I had a suggestion to look into getting a chikungunya vaccine. And when I went to the travel clinic, they said, no, it's been discontinued. And that's the IXCHIQ one. It's just the live attenuated vaccine. But there is another chikungunya virus vaccine, which is a VLP virus-like particle one instead of being live attenuated. And it's not paused. It's called Vimkunya. And the CDC website still seems up to date with recommendations for travelers and lab workers who might have need for a chikungunya vaccine to look into getting this Vimkunya. So, but not too surprising, there were some problems with the live attenuated vaccine. There was an episode, Vincent, that you did, I was not on, about yellow fever virus vaccines and measles vaccines that were somehow improved through a nonsense-mediated decay mechanism. That was 1221.
Let me look it up. It doesn't
Yeah.
ring a bell.
Yeah.
Here we go. Oh, this one. Dixon was still here. February 20. That's 2013. No, I got 221. It's 1221. Oh my gosh. Nonsense mediated decay. No, the title was a reference to the current administration. Actually, had nothing to do with the vaccine.
Okay.
Basically, these are what we did cover on those vaccines, measles and yellow fever vaccines, was that there have been some very serious adverse reactions to those vaccines in people with inherited IFNAR deficiency.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Got it. Okay. I misread this summary. Okay. And then, yes, a number of other episodes, and then two different ones where I wrote down from the summary, vaccines for cancer. So 1265, Vincent, if you want to talk about that.
Yeah, so this was really interesting. So they did an observational study and then backed it up with a mouse model showing that SARS-CoV-2 mRNA vaccines improve the lifespan of cancer patients who are on checkpoint immunotherapy. So if you have a certain kind of cancer, you may be eligible for checkpoint immunotherapy if your cancer cells have over a certain percentage, or a certain percentage of your cancer cells express PDL1, which is programmed death ligand 1, which would normally be on the cancer cell, and it inhibits the T cells from killing them. So there is a therapy that blocks that. And it turns out that mRNA vaccines make more PDL1 on cancer cells, so they can make you eligible for the therapy, and they also improve the lifespan of patients who are already on it, which they confirmed in a mouse model. This is just fantastic, in my opinion. I love it, and that's why we call the title "mRNA Vaccines Make Cancer Treatment Great Again," right?
Right.
Because they actually are, as opposed to what the administration is doing now.
Right. Right. And then the next week next week, 1267, vaccines for cancer, was about human papillomavirus, HPV. And so that was one of the ones that's in my next list.
Yeah.
Oh, I have my numbers
different.
wrong too, because I have 1267 and 1269. So maybe 1267 was something.
I thought this was a meta-analysis done, which you were on the episode actually, which showed that even if you already have HPV, or even if you've had surgery, it's good to get vaccinated because it will help get rid of the virus. Actually,
right. So it's not only a prophylactic vaccine; it's a therapeutic vaccine, not unlike rabies in that sense. Yeah. Okay.
I thought that was really a good study, which is, we've had lots of letters on Clinical Update from people who, I'm 75, should I get it? And you're like, you don't know your infectious status, so you might as well get it, right? Because even if you are already infected, in 75% of cases, the infection went away after vaccination. And they say also you should get it if you're going to have surgery to remove, forgot what they called them, but the HPV infected lesion.
Right.
You should get the vaccine before that because it will improve your chances.
Right.
Very cool.
Right. So then that is a segue into the next topic, which I picked was just that we've covered some classic papers. And so the week after the HPV vaccine one was episode 1269, where the HPV human papillomavirus association with cancer was worked out. Harold Zerhausen and so forth. And so that was 1269. But then 1241 had come along earlier, episode 1241. And I think it was in conjunction with Franklin Stahl dying, but he was half of the Messelson stall, famous experiment about DNA replication. And so some of us who have seen it many, many times in many, many classes and textbooks had fun talking about the Messelson stall experiments about DNA replication. And then DNA structure, probably again in conjunction with Jim Watson dying, was covered in TWiV 1273. And then that led to some of those photograph 51 pics and so forth that I talked about. And then I'm not sure what if there was any particular connection, but pre-messenger RNA splicing was described and the mechanism for that. And for at least Rich and Vincent and me, it was one of probably the paradigm shifting discoveries that happened in our scientific lifetime. And so it's very memorable about, how it came about, where we were when we learned about it. Rich told the story of somebody from Cold Spring Harbor coming over and telling Rich about it, and then Rich telling the rest of his lab, and they all thought that Rich had his leg pulled by this guy, but it turned out to be really true because it was just such an amazing story. That we put amazing in the episode title, I think, right? Because that was part of that episode. Yep. And then, as we discussed above, talking about the hepatitis B discovery, that was covered in 1279. So it's been fun to hear and cover some of those really classic papers, and I hope we continue to find and do some more of those in the next year, because you learn a lot from old science.
We definitely will. I really enjoy it. I mean, the catalyst was Messelson dying. Or was this Messelson?
No, it was Franklin Stahl.
Franklin Stahl died. Yeah. So I said, well, let's do this paper, because that was the follow-up to the Watson and Crick paper, which said the DNA is going to replicate this way. And they proved it. It was semi-conservative replication. We had such fun discussing it that I said, let's do some more.
Yeah.
Because we see all these technologies that nobody uses anymore, but we all did at one point, and we can wax poetically about them. So then I decided we did splicing, Hep B discovery, and eventually the Hep B, human papillomavirus linkage to cancer. So yeah, that's fun. And we will definitely do more. And we get a lot of letters about those because people can relate with that. There was one more story that I thought was very cool, and that is TWiV 1243, Capitalism, COVID, and Cancer. This is a really cool study from Nature. Respiratory virus infections awaken metastatic breast cancer. So they do a observational study of health records, and they see that these are people who are in remission for breast cancer, and then suddenly it comes back. They have a recurrence. They find that the recurrence is associated with the respiratory virus infection. So the idea is that you have breast cancer, it metastasizes to other places and then goes dormant. And then when you have a respiratory virus infection, all the cytokines and the inflammation reactivate those cells. So that was the theory. They did a mouse model which supported it, and which beautifully supported it. And then they go into some human records and try and get more evidence for this. And then we got a letter from a listener who was an epidemiologist who basically said the human data are not so good, but the mouse model, as you guys pointed out, is great. So I think this is a really interesting paper. And if you have had breast cancer, many people wrote in and said, I've had breast cancer. What do I do? Wear a mask in respiratory virus season. It's really important because who knows what's going to happen, right? I like that very much.
Okay, so then we asked Jolene about her picks for phage-related papers for the year, and she sent two. TWiV 1181, which is about plasmid phages, And her overall theme is new phages and their lifestyles. So 1181, sorry, is, I didn't do that right. Maybe you're looking it up too, Vincent.
1281.
Yeah. Okay. So, yeah, it's got
sex herpes. That's sex herpes and plankton. That can't be it.
No. Seek and ye shall find coronaviruses and phage.
Okay.
And the abundant phages that enter cells via receptors encoded on conjugative plasmids. Oh, yeah. So these plasmids that are involved in conjugation of the bacteria evidently encode the receptors that these phages use. So that was really early in the year, January 5th, a year ago. So, yeah.
Yeah, that was very interesting.
And then the other one that she sent me doesn't quite make sense. It's something about a 1281 Legionella. But 1281 is sex herpes and plankton. So there was one about, sorry, Jolene, I can't quite get it from this, but
yeah, it's the wrong episode number, right?
Yeah, if we try.
Well, did she give you a topic?
Well, it's a little bit goofy. New phages and their lifestyles, 1281. And then Legionella, and then TWiV 1181 plasmid phages. So maybe TWiV phages Legionella.
So here, 1241, she was on, and her paper was.
Oh, but maybe it's.
I don't think that's it.
In virology.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. That's not it either. I'm not finding it. Anyway, if we figure it out, we'll put the right link in for that. But it's been really fun to have Jolene come on and get us much more familiar with phage than we were in the past. So
there you have it, folks. 2025 in virology.
Yeah. 2 people's picks, plus a little bit from Jolene.
We have some time to do some emails.
Mm-hmm.
I will take the first one because it's from Robert. This should give you a good view of the skies when you are in the incubator. And it's a link to a cam. And I can see right now, it looks like it is cloudy, but there's some blue sky showing. Because there's a view of the Empire State Building, which is not too far from the incubator. So, yeah, that's very cool. Now I can see if it's cloudy or sunny.
Oh, so you should post that link in the beginning of the show notes, Vincent, and then it'll always be handy.
It's true. I should always look at it so when we do the weather, I can tell you. Okay, you can take the next one now.
Okay. Brian writes, gentlemen and ladies, the end of 2025 will be remarkable in that I found you folks. I ran into TWiV and virology lectures at about the same time because I trained in medicine, internal medicine, hematology, oncology back in the 1970s, as well as a master's degree in pharmacology, which was largely experimental design. I gradually became disabled with spinal stenosis in the 1990s, which progressed far enough that I could no longer get from the cancer center to the ER by the shortest route. In Canada, especially London, that means 4 months of the year in a foot of snow and sitting in snowdrifts halfway to the ER to get rid of pain. Talk about putting ice on it. It has been 7 long years. I retired and I miss it terribly. I still wake up at 6, getting ready for surgical rounds at 7 to catch surgeons while still awake before their ORs drag them away at 8. 80 hours a week was dedicated to internal medicine. I considered myself an internist first and hemonc. I largely lost track of modern biochemistry and virology 50 years ago. I think a couple of things have changed. A couple. I am now listening to TWiV when I wake up, then virology lectures, then Professor Racaniello's textbook from our university library to see if I should buy the electronic version. During COVID, I have fought the social media about vaccine hesitancy, but my anxiety about misinformation probably really started when I gave a lecture on medical fraud, highlighting a physician who did some residence training at my alma mater, Toronto. I'm sorry to say, and lost his license in the UK due to his authorship of a paper on MMR. So went to practice in a red state that would tolerate him, I guess. You know who. I'll send you a blog post for Jabberwocky, my word for dangerous misinformation, if you like. Highlights that guy. He said, Brian Deere liked the piece, but I stole from him a lot. Question. Do you have or can you target Canadian viruses? They don't need passports to get in, and Carney cannot get Trump to build and pay for a wall. And we share common ethical sources, legal structures, though our ability to turf a leader is easier, I think. I am not applying for a job, too old, but I would love to hear your assessments of what we are doing since we share common viral illnesses, especially as global warming exposes us from you all, well, all you all, since it's plural. Oh, and he spells plural, Pleural, probably intentionally. In this recent podcast, I thought I heard Dr. Griffin say we have had 5,000 measles cases. Or was that in reference to something else up here? Oh my goodness, 5,353 from our health info base. So yes, a lot of measles cases in Canada. Things I'd love to see. A Canada risk on TWiV, not me, 78 years old. Diving into people who influence us, like vaccine underminer of the UK, Dr. John Campbell, who is a nurse, or virus denier, Dr. Saeed Qureshi, formerly of Health Canada, our federal agency, who actually thinks only his PhD in analytical chemistry qualifies him to claim COVID-19 does not even exist. He's a federal government employee. Sorry, this is too long. Don't read. But your work is great. I directed my 2 grandchildren to the virology lectures. 16 years old. I'm hoping to get 1 doctor out of them. Thank you. I love all this stuff. Brian.
Can you target Canadian viruses? There are no Canadian viruses, right?
They don't know any borders, right?
Yeah. Well, we talk a lot about Canadian issues. As you mentioned, Daniel Griffin is always given the Canadian measles cases. And anything else that pops up, I think we talk about it. So we don't really need a Canada desk because we do cover it, I think.
Yeah.
All right, John writes, Doctors TWiV, now that we can say to 2025, mind the door, there was apparently a collection of great sentences in the WAPO, including this one on the lineage of a polarizing punctuation mark. That's the Washington Post, of course. Quote, too demure to be a colon, but more assertive than a comma, the semicolon was introduced in 1494 by Venetian printer and publisher Aldus Manutius. What a useful little tool it has been in its primary role of inserting a graceful pause between 2 related independent clauses, as in, quote, RFK Jr. came to my house, semicolon, he tore out the medicine cabinet with a crowbar. Mark Laswell. I like semicolons, but not as much as hyphens. Scientists seem particularly clueless in understanding the role of hyphens with compound adjectives, particularly nouns used as adjectives. When I used to review for biochemistry in European Journal of Biochemistry and EMBO Journal, the first pass always involved adding hyphens where needed for comprehension. Otherwise, the bright and clear -8C in Greater Braddock after 2 inches of snow last night. Here's to a better year ahead. That wouldn't be hard, but what are the chances?
Yeah. So I like semicolons too when they're used correctly, and I like hyphens for nouns used as adjectives. So I'm in your camp, John, on that. But Anne Curzon does a good piece on semicolons in her book that was my first pick of last year.
Yeah.
So you might check that out.
So I used to like John Irving, the writer.
Mm-hmm.
And he is a huge fan of hyphens and semicolons. Uses them all the time.
Mm-hmm.
It's really a style thing for him.
Yeah.
Okay, you're next.
Charles writes, hello, Twivers. 48 Fahrenheit 9C in Chapel Hill. Sunny today. Not bad for New Year's Eve. Wow, this is really current, Vincent. This is great. I
Yep.
think a lot of people misunderstood what the anti-vaxxers are trying to do. The anti-vaxxers move the goalposts frequently. They cite studies that do not have a control, those based in VAERS, for example, yet demand a saline-controlled RCT.
Randomized clinical trial.
Yes, thank you. They demand a saline-controlled randomized clinical trial for all vaccines, even if the new vaccine is just a combination of already approved vaccines. To a scientist, this is inconsistent, illogical, and hypocritical. So much so that the scientist is busy trying to find the evidence that convinced the anti-vaxxers they fail to see the big picture. The larger picture is to destroy our vaccine infrastructure. Aaron Siri has stated that if a vaccine is not regularly recommended, it can be removed from the vaccine injury table. Getting the vaccines out of the table is the first step to removing the vaccines from use. The second step is suing the manufacturers and getting billion-dollar verdicts for known side effects. This is the goal of at least 3 types of anti-vax disinformation spreaders. The shyster lawyers will have a very profitable time suing pharma over known side effects. The shyster lawyers do not care about the truth. They just want to win. In our system, that is their job, even though they're not really allowed to flat out lie. This also works for parents who think that their child was harmed by a vaccine. For most, this belief is false, but that doesn't matter. From the parent's point of view, their child was harmed by a vaccine and they are determined to protect other children. A noble cause if it were true about the harm. It is very hard, if not impossible, to convince a person that what they have experienced is not the truth. They will only believe evidence that supports their beliefs. Then you have the people that believe they are on a mission from God. They say things like, "For 20 years, I've gotten up every morning on my knees and prayed that God would put me in a position where I could end the childhood chronic disease epidemic in this country. On August 23rd of last year, God sent me President Trump." And that's a quote from RFK Jr. When you're on a mission from God, those that stand in your way are doing the devil's work. That justifies doing anything to get around or through them. Bottom line for the anti-vaxxers, even if they do not know it, destroy the vaccine infrastructure by any means. Lie, cheat, steal are all fine. Scientists, on the other hand, have to stick to the data. Thanks, Charles.
It's true.
Yeah.
This guy Siri is a lawyer. He doesn't know anything about science.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a move. That's a statement. You know, if a
Right.
vaccine is not regularly recommended,
Yeah.
it can be removed from the table. It's a lawyer statement.
Yeah.
It's only it is. It doesn't make scientific sense at all.
Right.
And you know, if you try and argue with them, but Paul Offit had a Beyond the Noise this week where many people have offered to debate him, including Aaron Siri, on vaccine safety. And one even offered him $1 million. And he said, no, science is not debated. Science is based on the evidence. So if you have evidence about vaccine safety, publish it and then we'll talk. But of course, that's not how they work.
Yeah. Well, good for Paul Offit for saying that. Yeah.
Anthony writes, if you have to go back to sponsorship like in the old days, the bills have to be paid. I just hope you don't set YouTube chock full of ads so the video becomes painful to view. I won't do that. As I said earlier, I'll figure out a way to pay for this. Congratulations on a solid brand. Still, the podcast medium seems to be facing limits. I don't know if it's an increasing supply or a diminishing demand. Whatever it is, I notice many top venues with big-name speakers garnering just a handful of views. Well, you're talking about 2 things here now. Podcast is an audio-only format.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, it's episodic, so it could be audio or video. So we do both audio and video. And I think the video is growing because YouTube is exploding all the time, right? Especially the short videos. People love that stuff. Audio, TWiV does better on audio than video.
Does it? Well,
It does.
I'm in one of
still.
those.
Yeah, people still are listening like crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, we get 40 to 50,000 listens per episode.
Wow.
And maybe 10 to 20,000 views per episode eventually. So the audio is killer, no doubt about it.
Yeah.
Because you can do other things while listening.
Exactly. And what I always tell people is like, well, I just listen because I can do other things. But if you want to watch the YouTube video, you can. But really, we're just talking heads. I mean, most of the time we're just static talking heads.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
But first of all, the editors, both Chris and David, do add things in,
Sure.
mostly in clinical update, but Chris always does in all of our podcasts. And so people like to see that. But other people say they just like to watch us.
Yeah.
Because we get animated, right?
Okay.
That's fine. I don't mind. I mean, when I watch YouTube with people talking, it's fine. I don't have a problem with that. Or you could just put it on your buds and not watch the video and just listen too.
Yeah.
It works also.
Yeah.
Okay. You're next.
That's
Anne.
Anne. Yes. Hello, Professor Racaniello. Here's a thread by Jim Allwine, retired virologist, reposted by Kevin Cruz, historian, pointing out the ridiculous claims RFK Jr. made about the 1918 flu. Click on the Allwine post to see the full thread. And then this is a link to Blue Sky that I have not looked at. And it says, what did good folks do to deserve the god-awful timeline we are living in? Yeah.
Yeah. So this is a great post by Jim. I'm glad he's doing this, right? More scientists need to do this. It needs to be all over the place. It's just a very short thing he wrote about why. So RFK claimed that the 1918 flu was caused by a flu vaccine, which, as we have pointed out, it's absurd because no one had influenza virus in 1918. They didn't have it until 1933.
It wasn't isolated, right?
Yes.
Until 33, yeah.
So, and Jim points that out.
Yeah.
And he calls it a lie, which is what it is.
Yeah.
I don't know if RFK even knows that, but it's a lie.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, the next one from Carson is about a problem that I wanted to read because a lot of people write about this. I wanted to let you know, in case you're not aware, the individual podcast pages, for example, microbe.tv/TWiV, are not updating appropriately with recent episodes. For example, the latest episode on the page is TWiV 1275 from November 30th. Most of the other pages have similar issues. Oddly, TWiM is up to date. I'm still able to see the most recent episodes on the homepage, and I'm able to find the episodes using the search bar. And if you go to YouTube, everything is fine there. Additionally, I believe there's an issue with the search function. For example, when I search RSV, I get 93,000 results with the first 70 or so pages showing just TWiV 1282 repeatedly. I may be misremembering, but I believe that search function would previously show only one episode once, regardless of how many times the term came up. Okay, so these are both known issues. The first one, the pages are not updating, but it's not for everyone. Like when I go, it's fine. And for some people it's fine. Other people it's not. And that's the hardest problem to troubleshoot.
Yeah.
Right?
For me, it's not fine.
I have asked my webmaster a few times to help me.
Yeah.
And it's very frustrating.
Yeah.
The other thing, this RSV 93,000 results, for some reason. So the website for MicrobeTV is very complicated, okay? Because it's basically a multi-site. Every podcast has its own site, but it's all within MicrobeTV. And there's a separate site called MicrobeTV, which is where you make changes that would affect everything else. When you publish a TWiV, for some reason, it gets published thousands of times over at MicrobeTV. Nobody ever sees that, but it shows up in search results. I have no idea what's going on. And when I just read this email today, I sent another text to my webmaster. Please help me because it's beyond my knowledge to fix this. So, So that's the story.
Okay. But I am one of those that has written to Vincent and said, it's not updating. But I know how to get around it. I just, like this person says, I just type the number in the search bar and get what I need. So, okay. So I will read Bill. It's beer vaccine, something in Science News that I haven't looked at yet. And Bill says, keep up the good work. Truth and honesty are in short supply these days. So,
he made a vaccine in yeast. That's part of the beer.
I see.
So his beer is full of, you can see it's very cloudy. It's full of the yeast, which settles down. And
right.
You have to shake it up, but then you drink it and you get, but this is a totally experimental thing. It's not licensed or anything, but
Right.
It's a polyomavirus vaccine. It's expressed in yeast.
Huh.
And I think you can go look at it at the bioarchive.
And it's Chris Buck. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's a virologist at NCI. I thought I recognized that name. Yeah.
Yeah. Is a little clip of him drinking
Yeah.
a sip of his beer.
Yeah.
I don't like cloudy beer. I don't know. I wouldn't drink.
Yeah, because I've seen him at meetings. That's why he looked familiar and his name was familiar. Okay, interesting. All right, so do you want me to take the next one?
Yeah, sure.
Sheila writes, Dear Vincent and team, I have just listened to the podcast with Jake Scott and noted Vincent's comment about lower numbers of listeners than you would like. Do remember that each of your listeners is getting better informed through your work, so we can have more informed conversations with people when they raise issues about vaccines. Please keep up the good work. Best wishes, Sheila. So she's right. Yeah.
That's true. And other people have pointed that out. Yeah.
Everybody that you have listening is somebody who's listening. It's like, I would always tell people, if you don't have very many people in your audience, remember that the ones who are there really want to be there. And so they're the ones who count a lot. So the ones who are listening are good.
Yeah. David writes, with respect to Jake Scott and vaccination, please remember that the scientist uses measurement as a path to the truth, the artist metaphor, the priest mystery, and the physician all three. The demagogue, the profiteer, and the revenge of the inept need only use fear, what William Faulkner called the basest of all things, tragically so much more than a tale told by an idiot full of sound and fury signifying nothing. Sadly, what we are seeing with vaccination is profiteering and natural selection signifying suffering and death. Shout out to Jolene and Rich, who have read my previous missives. And David is an MD in Syracuse, New York. I like that very much.
Mm-hmm.
The scientist uses measurement.
Yes.
I like it.
And the physician uses
All
truth,
three.
metaphor, and mystery. Yeah.
All right.
Michael writes, Dear colleagues, for 27 years, I was director of clinical microbiology at Montefiore Medical Center in the Bronx. It was rewarding. It was a very rewarding career, but my time to move on came, and now I am in Maine, raising honeybees with many microbial issues that are somewhat inscrutable. I wanted to tell you how much I enjoy TWiV and feel that it has sparked a renewal in my scientific interests, especially the historic and new studies that speak to the beauty and power of science. I could go on and would love to have a conversation with you about my 27 years in the Bronx, 5 in Brooklyn too. But more importantly, I wanted to attach a paper that may indicate that we need more gorgonzola in our life. My first course in microbiology was called Applied Micro at San Francisco State University, and we made blue cheese. Who knew? Your fan and fellow microbiologist, Michael. He's a SCD and then parentheses ABMM. Not sure what that stands for. And he sent this paper called High and Low-Fat Dairy Consumption and Long-Term Risk of Dementia, Evidence from a 25-Year Prospective Cohort Study. If we jump to the end, higher intake of high-fat cheese and high-fat cream was associated with a low risk of all-cause dementia, whereas low-fat cheese, low-fat cream, and other dairy products showed no significant association.
Notice they say our study's observational design limits causal
inference. Yes.
Inference. So that's
Yes.
true
Yes.
of
Yes.
all observational designs, but I'm happy to eat more gorgonzola for sure. I love it.
Okay.
ABMM is the American Board of Microbiology.
Medical microbiology.
Medical microbiology.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And last, we have a quote from Rich. Quote, without data, you're just another person with an opinion. End
Ooh.
quote. That's W. Edwards Deming.
Oh, I like that. Yeah.
That's right.
I'm going to save that one. Okay.
Okay, it's time for some picks of the week. What do you have, Kathy?
Well, first of all, I had to pick yesterday's astronomy picture of the day. And I put in the link that will get you to that always. As I opened that up first thing yesterday morning and I said, whoa. And then I sent it to about 20 people. And then I found I went all through their website to figure out how I could write to them and just say how great I thought their recent series of solstice images was, and then this one is just amazing. So you have to check out the astronomy picture of the day for January 1st, 2026. And then I already had my pick, so I had to do two. So my main pick was American kestrels put the cherry on top. And so it's an article, sort of Michigan-centric, of course, because you know that up in the upper part of the Lower Peninsula is where all the cherries are grown that are part of the Michigan cherry industry. And so it's previously known that if cherry farmers have kestrel net boxes in their orchards, they have fewer cherry-eating birds, which are a nuisance, such as robins and grackles. And kestrels, the birds that they have boxes for, are raptors, and they eat either these robins and grackles, or they at least scare them away. And so this article that I found, don't ask me how, but I found it, talks about a new study that if orchards that have occupied nest boxes have less damage to their cherry crop, there are less eaten or partially eaten cherries if the boxes are occupied with kestrels than orchards that don't have kestrels. And so there's some microbiology here. The kestrels may lower the amount of bacteria that's on the cherries before they're harvested, and thus they lower the small risk that dirty orchards pose to consumers. Cherry orchards with kestrels had less bird poop, and that's key because avian excrement can carry pathogens such as Campylobacter, which is a type of bacteria that can give people food poisoning. So they also make a point to say that, you know, cherries that are harvested are generally washed, but anything you can do to reduce the bacterial load would be good. And so this new study is a part of a growing body of research on how conserving different wild predators benefits humans. And the Lay article talks about some of those other wild predators. And I just thought it was a cool idea. And
that's neat.
Yeah.
I like kestrels too. They're cool birds.
Yeah.
All right. I have a pick, which I have right here. This, Science in Your Own Backyard by Elizabeth Cooper. It's out of print.
Yeah.
This is a copy of the 1958 edition that I had as a kid. Okay. I was born in the 50s, and I'm cleaning up, and this was on the pile to clean up, but I brought it in today. I'm going to leave it here at the incubator. So this is an early, effort at science communication, published in 1958. It's basically about exploring your backyard. And, Elizabeth says nearly everybody has a backyard. If you haven't, you probably know where there's a lot or a park. Wherever you go outdoors, that's the place to begin your exploring. And so it's all about you being an explorer, and you have scientific methods, right? You take notes, you keep records, you observe, you plan experiments to answer your questions, and you make careful observations. And it is divided into chapters like soil and rock, fossils, water, grass, flowers, plants from seeds, plants from spores, earthworms, snails. And I remember it is so much fun to read this. And you can just go out. She suggests things you can just go out in your backyard and do. So it's very simple. She illustrates it herself. You can get this on Amazon still. It's there. Maybe it's my copy I'm selling. I don't know. But it's just since it's my birthday today, I just kind of remembered this as a kid. So
Cool. Very
it's
cool.
all about science communication. I have a couple of listener picks. Bill writes, a few weeks ago, you commented that someone should do a song about what's going on under RFK. I have a band and I'm working on one, but in the meantime, I thought you'd like this from the wonderful El Cordova. It's called They Did the Monster Slash, and it's about budget cuts to science and public lands agencies. And there's a link to YouTube. Elle, in general, is very clever and a great musician, so she's my listener's pick. Bill is from Issaquah, WA, not state. Yeah, no state. It's just Washington. That's cool.
There were a couple of listener picks of the week that I guess didn't make it into my list. And one of them, well, there was the one that I did, the Marsh
The old
family
schoolyard.
video. But
Yeah,
there was
yeah.
another one that was just within the last week or two that, or three, where somebody wrote about a song about RFK Jr. Now I can't remember what it was, but yeah. So this will be good to check out El Cordova.
And Rona writes, Dear TWiV team, have you heard or seen of this Chinese virologist named Li Meg Yan? Early in the pandemic, she secretly left China and walked out on her Chinese virologist husband and was paid off by the Trump administration to come to America to espouse her lab leak theory. There are ties to her being paid by Steve Bannon $10,000 a month to keep her here and spread her lab leak theory. Now she's gone quiet and missing. Here's the New York Times story detailing it. I thought Alan Dove especially could appreciate the Times investigation and reporting. Her husband is desperately looking for her and even took a job as a professor here in America so he can be closer to help search for her. Maybe the TWiV team can sleuth her whereabouts. It sounds like she is quite in a pickle witness protection program. I've never heard of this. Have you?
No.
Well, I don't want to seem mean, but she shouldn't have been espousing the lab leak theory, okay?
Yeah.
And being paid to do it? Come on.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want anything bad to happen to you, but why were you doing that? To make money?
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Rona. All right, that's TWiV 1285. Stay with us for 2026 so we can teach you a lot of virology and other science as well. You can find the show notes at microbe.tv/TWiV. And I know they're not updating, but you can go to YouTube and you can find all the programs there as well. If you want to send us questions or comments or pics, send them to twiv@microbe.tv. And if you like our work, we'd love your support. We need your support. Microbe.tv/contribute. Kathy Spindler is Professor Emerita at the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor. Thank you, Kathy.
Thanks. This is a lot of fun. And I just thought of something about the, searching for the TWiVs. When I was doing this today, I knew that if I had typed something and it was an even numbered TWiV, that was wrong because that was a clinical update. So if you make any special, if instead of making them special TWiV, you give them a number, then we're going to have to readjust our thinking about odds and evens being clinical updates.
Exactly. In fact, that's why I don't number them, because I would have to make an extra one a week, and then it would throw off the even. So Daniel right now has all the even numbers, and we have the odd number.
Right.
Kind of nice. So I'm not going to mess with that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm Vincent Racaniello. You can find me at microbe.tv. I'd like to thank the American Society for Microbiology and the American Society for Virology for their support of TWiV, Ronald Jenkins for the music, and Jolene Ramsey for the timestamps. You've been listening to This Week in Virology. Thanks for joining us. We'll be back next week. Another TWiV is viral.